Yeah, I'm sorry.
Anything for me? Are you okay?
Yeah, I have a real short introduction, and I have my book open to it. Okay. Like this thing. I know. We need to pray. Oh, I think we need to pray. Oh. Is it good? Always have that. Trying to get back to work. That, you know, you try to get something on the TV. My wife Elaine gets because I always yell. This is too hard. Why is this so hard? You don't do any bottled water. Yeah, this is them. Right. We'll turn this over when we do the post. Yeah, if we have time. Oh. Okay. Have we not read it? Yes. No, we may see. Oh, okay. Well, let's pray for it. And then this will miraculously work itself out. Yeah, inshallah. All right, those who are online, you can hear us right now, right? Let's pray.
Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya salah, hayya al falah, hayya falah.
Oh, he just put it down.
Salat, salat, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah.
One second, let brother go. Yeah. Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. سمع الله لمن حمده. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. سمع الله لمن حمده. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. سمع الله لمن حمده. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. سمع الله لمن حمده. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
So, Assalamu alaikum. So you don't have a presentation?
No.
So we actually didn't need this.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. There you go. That's the resolution that we were looking for. Yeah, I'm gonna get back on. Yeah. All right. Get this. We're gonna pause. Second. So.
It's 17.
Where I had to pay.
You'll see, it's like July. You'll see it. Oh, okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, dear believers. So I want to first welcome you to our United Talim on behalf of the Talim Committee. You should know that these are recorded. We do download them to our YouTube channel, Masjid Al-Taqwa Chicago. So if you get any benefit from it, or any of our Jumas, you can find those on YouTube. Please subscribe and share with a friend if you really love us. So we have some exciting things to share with you today with our brother Bill Chambers. But before I do that, I'll ask each of our leaders from the respective masjids to offer a few words, 2 to 3 minutes, just to greet the believers before we get started. So, Imam Omar, if you can come on up and greet the believers, please.
Dear believers, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I just want to say that it's always a pleasure when we can get together and we can work as a community. We can share knowledge, we can share insights, we can sit back and collaborate and work together for something that would benefit us and our community for the future. And, so that's what we're here for, I'm not going to break out into a khutbah and put some Quranic insights on you because we're here for Brother Bill. But I just want to get a greetings from there from Baha Culture Center and also send kudos to Sister Jihad Bashir for a wonderful event that she shared last night. It was really, really it was beautiful, and the venue that she had there was, man, I didn't even know it was right in the neighborhood. Very, very beautiful venue that I think that we can use for situations where we think that we might not have the capacity to do at our places. So I did talk to the owner last night to work to build a relationship. And hopefully, inshallah, if we find ourselves in a situation where we can't do it at our places or things we do together, we have somebody, inshallah, that we already got a connection with. So thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And I will attempt to be even briefer, but I will give us a Quranic ayah to remember and to center ourselves around. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. There's nothing for the human being except for what they strive for. There's nothing for the human being except for what they strive for. Our collective work, our collective action, it is in response to a challenge that was laid down to us. When Imam Muhammad, when he said to give me a good future, he wasn't speaking about himself as an individual. He's speaking about what he was working for on our behalf, what he was calling us together to work for. And that future will not be realized without intentionality, without our own focus, without our willingness to move beyond what is just beneficial for ourselves as individuals, but to situate that in a larger context of what benefits us as a collective. So we pray that our efforts, that we continue to be focused on coming together to share what we have, as Imam Omar mentioned, to share the insights, share knowledge, to engage each other in questions that allow us to come to the understanding of answers that help us address the problems that we have in our society today. So we have a huge task before us, but Allah tells us He doesn't place any burden on the soul greater than its capacity to bear. And that is true for the individual soul, and it is true for the collective soul. So may Allah continue to bless us and keep us inspired, keep us focused on striving for that which we want, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much to both of our beloved imams for
your leadership and all the work that you do on behalf of communities. Because of the work you do, we benefit tremendously. So, on to our main event for today, inshallah. Today, the title of Bill Chambers' talk is The History of Activism in Chicago from 1968 to 2025. It is based on his book that is available here. He has made all proceeds from the book, the sales of his book, as donations to Masjid. So, Tabir for all of his great work. In the Bahar Company. Yes. Thank you for that admission. So a little bit about Bill Chambers, who many of us know and love, but some online, maybe it's an introduction, so you get a treat today. Bill Chambers is a full-time activist with a long history of civil rights, anti-racism, anti-war, Irish Republican, Palestine solidarity work. As part of his activist work, Bill has traveled extensively to Ireland, Palestine to meet and work with community organizations. They're working on the microphone, so if you all hear that background, it's all good. We keep rolling. He has published multiple articles for the Electronic Infidel, Palestine in America, Muslim Journal, Muslim Matters, and the Chicago Monitor on Islamophobia, surveillance of Muslims and social justice groups, Palestine solidarity campaigns, Black Lives Matters, and the movement for community control of police. He is currently a member of Masjid Al-Taqwa Chicago, which is part of Imam Wardi Muhammad's community, and the Muslim Anti-Racism Collaborative in the Chicago Irish for Palestine. We know him as one of our scholars, one of our beloved members, and someone who we gain a ton of knowledge from his experience and for his love of both the community and of our creator. So without further ado, I invite our dear brother Bill Chambers to come up to the microphone. The microphone is not working, but it's the microphone.
Microphone's not working.
Give us just a second.
Okay.
Keep going.
We need to give you. I can still say assalamu alaikum. And thank you very much for coming here to hear me. And we should probably, yeah, sounds good. Usually I like to wander around, but I know with the video, it's a little hard to do that. I do want to thank Dr. Aisha for the introduction and the whole Talim committee for inviting me here. And I appreciate Tariq and Mom Omar, there you are, for your comments and for your ongoing leadership. Is it working? You're in the back? Okay. I think the comment in the newsletter said that this was going to be something about activism. So I should probably tell you this presentation is going to be about. And there is a reason that I'm not doing a presentation. I'm going to try to do this a little differently than I think we normally do. One of the main reasons is that I'm covering about 60 years of activism, which is a little hard to put in a presentation. But the other thing I'm going to do is after each kind of section, and you'll kind of see that I talk about different periods of time and what I was doing then. I'm interested in some feedback from you all, or what was going on, for example, in the Nation of Islam during the Vietnam War. You know, and I was an anti-Vietnam War protester. I know what was going on with Muhammad Ali, but I don't know what all the other brothers are doing. So I will split up the sections of that. And for people that are online, I'll do my best to repeat the question. One of the things, so this is actually about my book that you heard Dr. Aisha just talk about. This picture on the front is one of my favorite pictures. It's from a very large pro-Palestine protest in Chicago. And if you haven't noticed, the Palestinian flag is covering over the name Trump on the Trump building. So this kind of symbolizes a little bit, certainly, about what I'm going to talk about. So this is really going to be my almost 60 years history of activism. Now, one thing that's important to remember is that I will be a Muslim for 15 years, July 10th this year. Alhamdulillah. And I've been in the Al-Islam community for about 12 of those years. So you will hear some of my activism, you know, before I became a Muslim, and you will hear a fair amount of it when I was a Muslim. So there are some things that I probably won't cover. I wrote another book, this was about 2 years ago, and this is called The Muslim American Fight for Social Justice, From Civil Rights to Black Lives Matter. So as I usually explain, this has in the introduction explains how I became a Muslim and why. It also covers a lot of history and my belief that the center of Islam is social justice. That's what I've always believed. That's what has attracted me to become a Muslim. And this is really a history of Muslim American groups, starting with the Nation of Islam, that fought for social justice. So, you know, if you want to read this one, this is good. I have a few what do you call it, quotes at the beginning, and I'll get to the quote for my other book. But this one from this history book, I think is particularly important here also. This is a hadith from Sahih Al-Bukhari, Volume 3, Hadith 370, from our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And one of the things that he said was, for every day on which the sun rises, there is a reward from God for those who establish justice among the people. So my belief in justice was still there even before I became a Muslim. And I know there's another hadith that says something to the effect of, and people that are better scholars like Imam Rabbani can correct me, but there is another hadith that says that the greatest jihad or struggle is to fight against an unjust leader. And we're certainly in the case. We have a more than unjust leader. We have I used to say amoral, but
really immoral leader that we all have to deal with. So what I'm going to do is start from the beginning, which is always a good idea. The two quotes that I have in my new book, one is from Spike Lee, "Do the right thing." Now, I talk about a lot about that, and that's something I've always believed. And if you read the book, you'll understand that it's not hard to do the right thing. It's not complicated to do the right thing. It's not hard to treat people with equality and justice and dignity. Now, people will, a lot of people have a whole trouble doing that, but if you go along that particular view, it's not that hard to figure out the right thing to do. But of course, now I have the Quran, which is my guidebook, which I didn't have before. So I know a lot more detail about doing the right thing and what that means. The other quote is from Malcolm X. It's a speech at the Oxford Union, 1964. And people always ask me, well, why don't you say Hajj, Malik al-Shabazz? Well, I have a quote from him in this book, and this book really wasn't written for you all. This was written for other Muslims. This was written for white people that know nothing about the history of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. If you ask them who Imam W. Muhammad is, they have no idea. So that's really why I wrote this book. And if I would have put, Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, they're like, okay, who is it? Well, everybody that this book is in the audience for, they all know who Malcolm X is. So this is a quote from him. "I'm a Muslim, but I know it's not in the mosque that we will win. It's in the streets and the cities, side by side with those, whites included, who want to rid the country of the racism that is eating it away." So I would say that's also one of my strong beliefs. So what I want to do is go back to my time in Detroit. I wasn't here. I stayed, I grew up in Detroit until I graduated from high school. So until I was 17, I went to high school in Detroit. And as you imagine, I didn't know anything about what Muslims were. I went to a Catholic high school, so I should probably talk about that. No idea who the Nation of Islam was. Of course, there was no information about that. But being a good Catholic, I understood how you needed to treat people. And you can kind of say, Pope Francis, who just died, had a pretty good idea how you're supposed to treat people. So when I was 16 or 17, that was right at the tail end of the civil rights movement. And I remember, looking for some way to get involved in that. The Voting Rights Act and all of that had already happened. So with another student from another school, we started this group called Students for Social Justice. And we figured it would be more of an educational type thing. And we got, there was this two priests, because we're appealing to a Catholic audience here, the Berrigan brothers, who were very involved in the civil rights movement. They were very much anti-Vietnam War people. They burn, draft records and all that. So we, all that good trouble, as I always like to say. So anyway, we brought Daniel in to give a talk, and not a whole lot happened after that. Well, there was a group I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. There was a group called PAR, and I talked about this in my other group. And it originally was the National Students Association. And in 67, 68, it split apart with a white wing and a black wing. Because again, you could probably understand that was the period of Black Power. African Americans were a lot more interested in making sure that they were leading their own groups in their own movement. Appreciated, white people's support, but that was something that needed to happen. So PAR, which was called People Against Racism, and I always joke, nobody's ever heard of that. And one of my arguments is, there's a good question, good reason nobody's ever heard of that. This was the only, that I can think of, the only all-white organization, I don't know if in American history, but certainly in recent history, that its focus was on fighting racism in America. And the way it did that was by fighting racism in the white community, right? So that was the goal. And the other goal was to be a good ally for other, Black nationalist groups or the Black Panther Party or, whoever it was. There's a really short thing, which I found very interesting. This is from People Against Racism. We are at the point of a new departure for the civil rights struggle. As recent furor over the Black Power has brought out, Black people in the US are increasingly determined to develop political power and responsibility for themselves and to separate themselves from white initiatives and leadership. I'll skip over some of it. So the question is, what is the role of whites who genuinely want to be part of the struggle? So these are the objectives, and there's about 4 of them: to support the Black movement in those instances where direct support is possible and asked for, to educate ourselves and others to the existence and manifestation of fascism and the struggle, objectives, and analysis, objectives, and struggle of the Black movement, to raise the issue of racism in our own communities, and to confront institutions on issues which arise both locally and nationally, and to take action. So this was, back in 1967, 68. And one of their core principles is something that I still believe today, is that the core contradiction in American society is racism. Now, over time, it gets called other things. It can be, putting Japanese in concentration camps, or deporting Chinese workers, or it could be deporting Muslims after 9/11, demonizing all Muslims as being terrorists. To me, it's the same thing. And if you look at what the ideas are, you're going to demonize these people. They're not like us. They're a danger, and we need to get rid of them. I mean, that sounds a lot like racism. The other thing that they still believe, is that the foreign policy of the United States was based on racism. Okay, so one of the reasons, of course, this was a time when the Vietnam War was going on, and there wasn't any respect for the Vietnamese. We were acting like a white colonial power when we went over there, and I always like Muhammad Ali's comment, no Viet Cong had ever hurt me. So, and if you look at the wars that have happened since then, even the ones now, Afghanistan, Iraq, we don't like Iran very much. And there's a lot of South American countries that we've helped overthrow their government or whatever. And oddly enough, it seems to be all people of color. that's not odd. That's on purpose. So if you do believe, like I do, the core contradiction in our society is racism, it makes a lot of sense. So when, and of course, I was involved in the, well, actually, I should tell you a couple of things that PAR, People Against Racism, did. I mean, they actually did stuff other than just talk about stuff. We did go and protest at Nixon's inauguration, which was very interesting. But there was a group called the Black Liberation Army that was in Delaware. And all of Delaware, you know, they just went into this weird frenzy, and, you know, they kind of remind me of, you know, people after the Civil War being worried that the slaves are all going to come and kill their masters or something. But that was the kind of thing it was. And they put a really long curfew, and of course, only on the Black communities. So there was a march of the Black community there, and then we, since it wasn't far from DC, we came and joined the march. And you can kind of say, well, you know, maybe that protected it a little bit, but you know, they were interested in actually having us there. So that's kind of an example of some of the things we did. And this part, I'm interested in your thoughts about it. What happened with People Against Racism, and this was a whole trend that I saw going on in the country, mainly for leftists, activists, those kind of groups. PAR was not a leftist group. It wasn't a Marxist group. You know, its theory was, you know, the main contradiction with racism, and we're going to fight in our community. Well, once the protests of the Vietnam War got started, I mean, those became huge, as we all know. What do you think people forgot about? Well, racism, you know. I'm not suggesting, because there were plenty of, you know, African American groups that were still fighting racism, and actually the whole Vietnam War, you know, there was more people of color, you know, that got drafted and that whole thing. But as far as interest in the white community in fighting racism, disappeared. No interest. So PAR had, you know, 3 or 4 locations on different campuses like Michigan and stuff like that. They folded. The white people weren't interested. They were interested in fighting the Vietnam War, which, okay, was a very valid cause. But so those of us that, again, saw that as a racist war, there's one brother who always asked me about the weathermen. I don't know why he's always interested in weathermen, but everybody knows who the weathermen were. Yes, yeah. Kind of, okay. So there, at that time, that's the exact time I'm talking about, there was the Students for the Democratic Society, so they did a lot of the anti-war stuff. And at one point, they split into 2 factions. And one faction, who still called themselves SDS, or they changed their name a little bit, their belief, which I thought was stupid, was that, you know, they were all white, middle-class college kids like me, right? So they thought the best thing to do, since they were Marxists now, was to support the working class and get the working class to do a revolution, you know? So they were going to leave school and go off to the factories to work. What are those workers going to think of you? You don't have any experience doing this. You're like an educated white guy, and you're going to come in here and tell us what to do. And to me, the other stupid thing about it is that there were black liberation unions that were around at the time. There were 3 or 4. There definitely was one in the auto industry and so on. Okay, why don't you go support them? Oh, no, I mean, so anyway, the weathermen were on the other side. And the reason I like their analysis, they also said that the Vietnam War, United States was at its core was racist, and they can continue that idea. And they were very big supporters of the Black Panther Party. I remember going to, I wasn't in either organization, by the way, but I remember going to Black Panther Party, fights. I was at a dinner yesterday, and they were talking about this guy Frank Chapman, old civil rights leader. Anyway, he was saying, power of the people, power of the people. And I said, yeah, I remember being at rallies when the Panthers used to say that. You know what the other thing they used to say? Off the pigs. So, and the police were surrounding them. They were saying that. Anyway, so I liked the analysis that the weathermen had, but of course they went underground and started bombing various places. The only thing I won't say whether I approved of that or not, but usually you have to remember the only people that they killed in the bombing were themselves. It's called own goals. It's an Irish term. They were in a bomb making factory in New York and they blew themselves up. So they would do things like, everybody remember the Attica Rebellion?
Yeah.
So they went into, that was New York, right? I think, yeah. So they went into the New York Bureau of Prisons and blew it up. But nobody was there. But that's how they handled things. And there's a few more examples, but I don't want to get caught off in that. So that's kind of happened during that period. And then, of course, I got very involved with supporting the Black Panthers and other organizations that were doing that at the time. This is one point I want to stop for a minute. One question I had was like the one I mentioned in the beginning. I know that Muhammad Ali obviously had a lot of difficulty with being drafted and, I'm not going to go and going to jail, all those kinds of things. I was kind of wondering, like for people that are my age or whatever that were in the nation, what did you do, or what was that environment like in terms of, did you resist the draft? Did they ignore you? Did you try to get out of the draft? Anybody?
Nice.
What's that?
That's around time when he was refused to go to the draft in 67, was it?
Yeah.
Ali. I said I was still in high school.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I remember
Yeah,
it.
Brother Clyde.
I took a couple of trips to Canada to see what that would be like. And I realized that the African-American men who had gone up to Canada were in pretty bad shape
Okay.
trying to live in Canada. And so I'm saying I could be in bad shape here and just, deal with that if it comes to that. And then they introduced this thing called the lottery. And they pull numbers based on your birthday. So since I was I was 191, I was probably not going to get drafted. So that. But I continued to be very, very, very enthused and involved in watching Muhammad Ali's struggle, Muhammad Ali's battle. So of course, by the time I came into the Nation of Islam, most of that had passed.
Yeah, so brother, for the people online, Brother Clyde was just talking about, he visited Canada and the brothers that had gone up to Canada didn't look like they were doing too well. And then actually this also affected me. They introduced the lottery. That was when I was in college. I signed up as a conscientious objector at 18. And the other thing that was a scam because they only, I was a Catholic. They almost never approve Catholics as conscientious objectors. They certainly wouldn't approve Nation of Islam people as conscientious. About the only people they approve were like Jehovah's Witnesses, maybe Quakers, and that was about it. So you could hand in all the like I did, all the letters, anything you wanted. Never went anywhere, but yeah. And to finish up, just like Brother Clyde said, I ended up having a fairly high number. And if you put yourself in the pool at the end, then you got out of it. And it's like, I don't really want to be a conscience. I don't want to do anything.
Assalamu alaikum, Bill.
You know, one of the things that, you know, you're talking about the Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
Is that it was not encouraged and the members of the Nation of Islam to even join the military. You know,
Okay.
it was actually they were actually encouraged not to. And then even if they was to go to prison, preferably to go to prison before you would even go into the draft. You know,
Yeah.
So like Muhammad Ali said, you know, in his saying, you know, is that listen, these people never did anything. There wasn't our fight, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of Muslims didn't register. A lot of Muslims went to prison. Elijah Muhammad, Imam Warfi Muhammad, you know, went to prison instead of being drafted or going into the military.
Okay. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Bill. Can you hear us online?
Oh, you have a
Bill?
question online?
Yes, this is Dr. Ramadan. In answer to your question, I was just finishing college at that time, and I was mentally prepared to follow in Muhammad Ali's footsteps and go to jail. But I happened to have gotten accepted to medical school at that time, and that changed my course. But I strongly believe what he was saying, and as a member of the Nation of Islam, I was ready to go.
Okay.
Just wanted to add that.
Thank you. I'm actually going to see if we can probably move along because this is going to be a very long discussion.
Definitely.
I got caught in the middle.
Yeah.
I went into the Navy in 1966 for 4 years. And then after 2 years sea duty, they gave you 2 years shore duty. So on shore duty, a civilian came in and he saw me read the Malcolm X's book. And he invited me out to the meetings in Norfolk, Virginia. So he came by and picked me up Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, went to the meeting. And so after a while, they, toward my end of that 2 years, they called me into the office over there and they said, we were watching you, we know you're going to the meeting. And so I used Muhammad Ali's line. I said, those people did nothing to me. So instead of getting out.
And how did that go over?
Instead of getting out in September, when I went in, 66, I get out in June, 3 months ahead of time. And honorable discharge too. So
That's great.
that comes-
It's Brother Abdullah, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The brother was just talking about being in the Navy and being kind of in the middle and reading Malcolm X's book and going to meetings. But you were lucky enough to be able to be discharged.
Yeah.
I'm going to. Yes, be quick.
I think, you know, the biggest rationale this nation, this was freedom, justice, and equality. And position that Dr. Elijah Muhammad took and the Nation of Islam took. He said, why should we go 1,000 miles, fight for someone else's freedom and their justice and their equality, and we're not getting that here in America?
So,
And I think that was the principal rationale.
yeah. Brother Bashir was talking about that. It really came down to, you know, why should we go over to fight for somebody else's freedom when we don't have it? I want to move on because I know hopefully we have a little extra time today. I want to talk about the period of time that I was an Irish Republican, and whenever you talk about this, there's about 800 years of history, but I'm gonna boil it down to a couple major things. So Ireland is England's oldest colony. They were the first colony of the English Empire, and up to now they're the oldest because if you're an Irish Republican, they're still part of Ireland. There's the Republic of Ireland that's in the south. And I call the north of Ireland, but its official name is the Northern Ireland, and that's occupied and owned by the British. So it's very easy to look at Ireland as still being occupied by the British. And we're definitely, during this whole period of time, we're talking about military occupation. And we're talking about the Irish being just peasants and starved, and they were Catholic, they couldn't practice their faith. I mean, it's a really, really terrible history. But what happened, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. A lot of people don't know that, obviously everybody here knows who Frederick Douglass is. One of the trips he took that he said influenced him the most, when he was agitating for abolition in the United States, was to Ireland. And he spent a few days, few weeks there. And one of the things he said was, I was treated like a normal person. Nobody treated me like I was black, like how people treat me in the United States. And he said that was a real eye-opening thing, because he hadn't been out of the country, and here he goes to this country that you don't care you're black. He drew large crowds. The point I'm making is that because of the Irish history of being oppressed for 800 years, they always have a lot of sympathy, and not just sympathy, but support for the civil rights movement in the United States, especially now, for Palestine. They're, like this, with Palestine, with all the various freedom movements across the country, like across the world, the freedom movements that were going on in Africa at the time. Even Malcolm X, talks about that period of time before he died. The French and the British and the U.S. were bombing civilians in the Congo. That was when the Congo was trying to fight for their freedom. So, we have a long history of trying to stop people from doing that. So, the reason that I got involved is I won't go into the rest of the history, but I spent a lot of time in the north of Ireland, and the Catholics up there, and it's not just the Catholics, there are people that were nationalists, in other words, pro-Irish people. They weren't Catholic, but they didn't like how they were being treated. So they were treated as second-class citizens. And there's a couple books you can read about Ulster's White Negroes is a famous one. And that's kind of how they were treated. No political power, couldn't get jobs, couldn't get housing, all that kind of stuff. There was a civil rights, the Northern Ireland civil rights movement that started in about 1972. And if anybody's heard about Black Friday, probably not. That was a civil rights movement based on Dr. Martin Luther King. And so they followed what was going on here, and they thought, let's try, nonviolence to get our rights. Well, on Bloody Sunday in Derry, which I've been to multiple times, what happened was they didn't have any weapons. They were a peaceful march, several thousand people, and they're actually called the Black Watch. But anyway, the British paratroopers came in with live weapons and just killed 14 people. And they said, oh, these were all IRA people. And there wasn't any IRA people there at all. IRA hardly existed. So at that point, they realized, okay, being peaceful is not going to get us anywhere. And obviously, a very different situation than let's say, all of us were in the civil rights in here. At least we had some government that might listen to us and might pass the voting rights to all that kind. They didn't even have their own government. That was all done in London. So most of the activism that I did, there was a group called Irish Northern Aid that I was a part of. And mainly what we did is we supported the whole, what I would call the Irish Republican movement. People would say, oh, you know, you support the IRA. Well, we support a united Ireland, and we support the struggle, and we support Sinn Féin, who was the political arm of the IRA, you can say. And then we would just point to, well, what about South Africa? You know, ANC was the political arm of, anybody remember what the name of the military arm was in South Africa? I can't remember, but it's something about a sword or what. They were running around blowing up stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were killing Afrikaners. So, and the Irish were also very big supporters of the boycott of South Africa and that kind of thing. And real quickly, I was over there one time, and this was after the Good Friday Agreement, which I'll mention in a minute. But they were very interested in how different countries resolve their conflicts. You know, South Africa was one. You know, so I met the guy who was the current police chief in Johannesburg. Can't call him African American, but you know, Black South African. He was the police chief, and then he would talk to us about, well, you know, like what did you do before? Oh, I was part of the, you know, the Flaming Spear or whatever. I mean, he was part of the group that went around and blew up stuff. And you know, now he's the police chief, and he was talking to us. So, so our group here in the United States, a lot of what we did was support what was going on in Ireland. But there was, this would be connected to, like, think about immigration stuff that's going on now. There were a lot of IRA prisoners that had served their time in Ireland. And then after the Good Friday Agreement, they were let go, and then they tried to come into the United States. And as anybody knows, if you try to come into the United States, you have a question on there that says, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been in jail? Well, they served their time, but they couldn't answer the question. So essentially, they were here illegally. So there was a period of time mostly during Clinton Bush period, where, you know, these people were living here for 20 years or something, had wives, children. You know, they didn't have ICE back then, but the immigration service, they would just go after these people and deport them back to Belfast or wherever they came from. And a lot of these people were under threat. Like there was another side called the Loyalists. They were, you know, racist bastards, and they would come out and just shoot Catholics or shoot anybody. So they didn't necessarily want to go back. And I remember visiting one of the people that we tried to help. He was in a super security prison in Colorado, one of those ones you hear about where they send all the maximum security, all the terrorists. And this guy was in his late 20s and he had a American wife and a little blonde daughter. And I'm, you know, talking to him behind the glass and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then he eventually just kind of gave up. He came to Christmas. He was there for, just send me back. And I don't know if he ever saw his wife or daughter again. So that's the main kind of activity that we were involved in. The last thing I'll say about that is and this was part of my Palestine activism when I started to get into that. I was always very interested in working with political prisoner kind of organizations, ones that, you know, help prisoners, you know, get back into the world. The one in Ireland was called Questja. Don't remember what it means, but anyway, they would support any ex-prisoner, you know, help them get jobs, housing, all that kind of stuff. So the group in Palestine that does that is called Adamir, which means steadfast, and they're a political prisoner rights organization. So one thing I helped organize was for the head of that group and one of the political prisoners to do a tour of Ireland. And that was awesome. I won't spend any time. We had such a great time, but the way the Irish people welcomed them, it was just mind blowing. I mean, they went into the city of Derry and they were given the keys to the city, and it was just, yeah, a really cool thing. I'm going to kind of switch and talk a little bit about, becoming a Palestine activist and a couple other things. Maybe we'll skip the comments on that and get a little farther along. The reason I became a Palestine activist when I was in Ireland for a whole bunch of times, I would always look at, this is mostly like in Belfast and Derry, that the nationalists, pro-Irish people, in the neighborhoods were all segregated. I mean, think of it like Chicago. You wander into what was called the loyalist, pro-British neighborhood, you get shot. And they could tell by your last name or what soccer gear you had on or what school you went to. So I was always great. I was William Chambers. I mean, I could have been either side. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, so if you go into the nationalist neighborhoods, you see these Palestinian flags like all over the place. And all the curbstones were painted Palestinian flag colors. Okay, that's rather interesting. And then you go into the loyalist neighborhoods, and these guys were thugs and criminals and really bad news. They were flying Israeli flags. And they had Israeli flag colors on their curbstones.
He was Irish.
These are Irish people, but it would take a little while to talk about, but they were originally planted there by the British. They planted people in Ireland, mostly Scottish people and stuff like that. And, let's get all these indigenous people out of the way, all these Irish people, and we're going to plant them in. And they had, think of it as, I don't know, like one of the southern states, like the government or state government or local government. These people were in charge and they had all the jobs, they had all the housing, and you weren't going to threaten them. They were going to kill you. So I always thought it was so ironic that, okay, you're Israel supporters. They were the most white racist, hated Jews, hated Muslims, and now here they're flying the Israeli flag. It kind of reminds me of what's happening now with this whole accusation of, we're a country filled with anti-Semitism. That's all made up. Trump and his group, they're all anti-Semites. They have a whole background to that. And then you've got all these Christian evangelicals that go, we support Israel. And then you realize, okay, they have this view that at the end of time, is going to be where Palestine is. And when, I guess it would be Jesus Christ comes back, he's going to kill all the Jews. I mean, they're just going to all be wiped out, and then the rest of them, the Christians will all be taken up to heaven. It's the same crazy thing. But why are they doing that? Power, right? Political power. So that's how I became a Palestine activist. I was in a group called Palestine Solidarity Group for many, many years. One of the things that's probably hard for people to imagine now, that this was right before 9/11, there was probably the largest pro-Palestine march in history in DC. And thousands and thousands of people with Palestine flags. And I remember flying there with some, they were like from Syria, right? Arab doctors or something. And I said, well, who'd you vote for? Oh, we voted for Bush. Okay. which were still going there. And I think now, I don't think they'd be too thrilled about voting for Bush. So before I go into that a little bit, I want to talk about a couple of the other things I was involved in. I should ask, how much time do we have?
Let me check. I know we normally go for an hour,
Yeah,
but
we're already over that.
keep going. I'll give you some hints.
Okay. So most of my Palestine activism last 20 years, a lot of protests, a lot of disrupting Jewish United Fund events. There's a group called the Friends of the IDF. IDF is the Israeli army, and they actually they'll do fundraisers that raise millions of dollars. And I think, what other foreign army can come to the United States and raise money for the army? And nobody says, anyway, so a lot of protests around that. And I won't talk about, if you want to hear about the delegations that went on, I've been to Palestine 4 different times. There's a lot of detail in my book about that and what Palestine is like. And I gave another Talim on Palestine where I talked about some of that. So I'm going to skip over that. The one thing I do want to talk about is, there's now a lot of targeting of Palestine activists, particularly the college students, particularly the ones that are not full citizens. Sometimes they actually do have a green card and they still get taken away. That's been going on a very long time. And one of the things, actually from like 1980s or something, that what happened to me was after the last Palestine trip, I came back and Elaine and I were on a trip. We're visiting our daughter. She was studying abroad in France or whatever. And one of my very good friends calls me up and says, well, the FBI was just here and they tore apart our house, took everything out of our house. And, they found they left their list of people that they wanted to go from. I just wanted to tell you, you're 5 minutes. Okay. You're the last one on the list.
Wow.
So I like, okay. Well, what eventually happened is that they thought we were supporting terrorism, that somehow these Palestine trips that we were giving money to terrorist groups, which obviously we were not. So there was a big battle for about a year and a half. There were about 13 people subpoenaed. I wasn't, but all the people refused to speak to the grand jury. So all that went away. But instead, they ended up putting on trial one of the major Palestinian leaders in Chicago called Razmia Hoda. And that trial went on a long time. She was a former prisoner, and they deported her to Jordan, where she's still doing stuff. The only thing I'm gonna end with two things. One is there was a period of time I worked for CARE for about 4 years. We had a newspaper there, online newspaper called Chicago Monitor. So I was the editor of that, and I did a lot of coverage of different events. And a lot of those articles are in here in my book, as long as also the Muslim Journal articles. And some of the things that I kind of don't remember that happened that I see as successes, and that's one of the reasons why I want people to read this book. There's a lot of success that movements in Chicago have had. So one of the examples, one of the largest protests during the Black Lives Matter period was partly organized by CIOGC. And I would say it's the largest African-American and Muslim joint protest I've ever seen. About 8,000 people. And the main goal was community control of the police. And if you read it in the other papers, yeah, it's another Black Lives Matter, and they don't know what they want, and there's a bunch of Muslims are in. No, it was very detailed, and they wanted community control of the police. And as you probably know, that's a real thing in Chicago now. Took a very long time, but that's something that Muslims help support. I was part of making Malcolm X Day is an official holiday in Illinois. Hopefully everybody knows that. The other, and probably the other thing we did was talking about, you remember the Muslim ban? Yeah, and that's probably going to happen again. There was a very successful protest that CARE was involved in where we basically shut down one of the O'Hare terminals. And they had to somewhat back off on that, and they were providing lawyers for people. So that was a very successful event. The very last thing I'm going to say, and obviously I skipped over a few things. You'll find at the end of my book is some suggestions about resistance to Trump. And I'll just read them and then we'll kind of finish with that because it's probably been 5 minutes. One of the things I talk about is prioritizing. Now I finished this on Inauguration Day. Prioritize, like particularly people that are vulnerable. So at the time, I thought about undocumented immigrants. You know, they need to be protected. If you have people in your community, you need to protect those people because you know they're being snatched off the street. Now I would add Palestinians and Palestinian protesters. The second one was disruption, which I'm a big favor of and always have been. This would be things like our Representative Sean Casten. He's our representative. A group of us and the Palestinian groups have disrupted his last 2 or 3 town halls because he's done nothing about the genocide in Gaza, nothing. And his largest group of constituents is Palestinian. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the other ones are boycotts. We're doing a lot that was invented by the Irish. That's another story. But now people are boycotting Amazon and Walmart and Target and those kind of places. And the other things I said about like lawsuits, we see a lot of that going on. And the last thing that I think would apply here too is protect our social services because they're coming after you. Think about the Salam Wellness Center. They're going to be cutting all the federal grants to them. So some of this is going to be filtered down to our community, and it means doing all you can to support groups like that, whether it's giving money or bodies or whatever. So probably went over, but sorry about that. So this book is on Amazon for the people online. Is on Amazon, but don't get it on Amazon because we're boycotting them. You can get it on barnesandnoble.com. And same price there, $20. Okay.
Look here. Look here.
Thank you, Brother Bill. That's really deserving of a part, probably a 2, 3, and a 4. You condensed a whole lot. So our book club right now, we are reading Revelation by Mohieddin. We're starting that this Wednesday. And the intent is to read for 40, 45 minutes and then spend the remainder of that hour in discussion about what we've read. With the intent of completing the book, if we're doing this on a weekly basis, we'll finish in, I would say about maybe 2 months, 2 months or so. Well, no, it might be a little bit more than that, or maybe 3 months. But maybe possible that we'll add your book to our, to the book club reading.
They do talk about Masjid.
See, who doesn't like to see themselves in it? And I also want to recognize Imam Muhammad Idris. From Charleston? Charleston, South Carolina.
By way of Chicago.
In New York.
You gotta share whatever your skincare regimen is, or because every time I see you, you look the same.
How to eat to live.
I had the good fortune of being a classmate of his son Elijah.
Yeah, he just left.
He just left?
Yeah,
He was here.
yeah.
Oh,
He dropped me off.
alhamdulillah. So he come back to get you.
I hope somebody will get me.
Alhamdulillah. Did you want to say a few words?
If it's possible.
Please do. Please do.
Ramadi.
And he definitely was an activist.
Muslims for justice.
Muslims for justice, yeah. Wherever he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quotation. The court case, right.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a great pleasure. With the name of Allah, the most merciful, benefactor, the merciful Redeemer. I heard the speaker, he was speaking about Muhammad Ali. And I had the picture of Muhammad Ali, Imam Warthi Muhammad, and myself. And this picture was taken in 1976. And the Imam, we was at the Masjid on Stony Island. And Imam Muhammad said, if nobody else will pick up this flag, I'll pick it up. And we walked from 74th down to Grand Park. And when he got there, he handed it to me. He handed the flag to me. And I've had it ever since. I hold up the flag of America. And this is my country. It's a great pleasure to be here. I love this city. I love the believers in this city. I love the people in this city. We don't take no stuff in Chicago at all. You can go around the world, but we don't take any stuff whatsoever. Praise be to Allah. I have a paper here that says, ask Idris and get the answer from Muhammad. Another one, I deal with this lady here. There was 3 people who taught me. This is my grandmother. And she didn't take no stuff. She didn't take any stuff. She would hit you with a frying pan. And when we came into the community, in 1975, the man was talking with those people from our grandparents and everything, and said that we got to take on that mindset. We got to take on that moralistic mindset, because today the children are cursing, they're doing everything to the mothers, saying anything they want. So we got to do like our former parents. If I talk back to my mother or my grandmother, she'd hit me with a frying pan. You know what I mean? And then you could go tell the police or whatever. It's a great pleasure. I came up and I did the Juma at Mosque Culture, the Mosque Culture. And Mosque Care, pardon me. And, you know, we had a program called the Culture Program in Chicago that I was head of. And I will be coming here as much as I can, because I like to see all of us together as one. Different location, but one, because we all came out of the same womb.
Right.
We came out of the same womb, and we did it.
Yes, sir.
We placed Obama in the White House. You see that place that they're building down in Jackson Park? That is ours. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we got to get some land to call our own. Well, we produced Obama, because we used to march with the Imam, had us, we did it all. We put Washington in the mayor office, we put Jane Byrne in the mayor office, and we did the political thing here in Charleston, I'm saying Charleston, Chicago. Because the city of Charleston invited Imam Muhammad down there, I don't know how many times. I'm gonna conclude, this is a picture of Imam Muhammad, the mayor, myself. And he had the Imam to speak on freedom is marginal and the space must be shared. And that's all we want. We want our share. Matter of fact, we want the whole pie now. Yeah. I'll be through in a minute. This is a picture of myself in the library. We have a library next to my house in Charleston, South Carolina. We have a daycare center. We got the whole 9 yards. And we did it because the Imam, I'm going to Charleston, South Carolina. So now I'm gonna conclude. I will show one thing more and I'm gonna conclude because I don't want to get beat up. Well, anyhow, the mayor of Charleston said recently, the new mayor, that he know when he got elected and he was about to be made his inauguration speech, he said, I know Muhammad is gonna keep me in line. That's what he said. And that's what Islam came. Prophet Muhammad came to keep everybody in line. And that's what we're working on. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, alhamdulillah. We thank you for your attendance. We thank again our presenter today, Brother Bill Chambers, for sharing with us a snippet of not just the Chicago activism history, but his own history. Very, very meaningful. So, alhamdulillah, we got food. I don't know what it is, but we got food.
We better have some food and I go with it.
Yeah, do we have any now?
You got a trip coming up.
Oh, well, yeah, yes. Yes, we do have a trip coming up, but the registration for it is concluded. So everybody that has already signed up will be touching base with those folks because it looks like we'll be caravanning down there.
Where?
New Medina.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So,
I have a couple of announcements.
yeah, come on. Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do mine.
Assalamu alaikum. Just real quick, few announcements. May the 10th, the community of Imam Worthy Muhammad and the folklore community will be coming together again this year and honoring the pact that was agreed upon by the leaders of both of the communities. The folklore community, the leader Kiera Lubick, and Imam Worthy Muhammad. So it's going to be again at the Bahar Center, and the only reason why they chose the Bahar Center, this is before the Taqwa Center was up their game with the technology now.
Oh.
They wanted, we had the ability with the technology to Zoom and to go around. So they offered again this is, so inshallah next year, inshallah, it could be at Masjid Al-Taqwa. But that's on the 10th. And the reason why I'm putting this out there is because I think a lot of times we take these relationships that we built with other faith community, especially the Catholic community that has been a very strong supporter of our community over the years. In Chicago, the Ecumenical Office of Religious Affairs, we always had strong interfaith dialogue with them. And also it was the folklore that introduced Imam Muhammad to Pope John Paul to give the address in Rome. So, it's not small, and we really should really honor our relationship with them in Chicago. And I'm saying this because I feel like I shouldn't have to, but I be trying to pull people to come out and not play these things off, especially when you have the leaders of our communities, being here representing us to support, and then behind us we don't have but a few, people, and I know we have a lot of people in the city of Chicago that support, that say they're supporters of Imam Worthy Muhammad. So that's on the 10th, and we do have advertisement going out, the flyers going out, that's going through both communities. Yes, ma'am. The 1 o'clock, and they want to fix the food. So they're asking us not to fix any food. They want to fix the food and bring the food, So that's the 10th. Also, on the June the 21st, we are having a program again honoring our pioneers. We do it every other year, and this is the year where we honor those people who helped make the sacrifices, for us to have what we have in America today. And that's Islam, Al-Islam in America. But we're not saying this started in 1975, because that's not where it started. It actually started in 1930, and realized that our community has been going through evolutionary changes since then, So we're saying that come out, support this event. We have Brother Nuri Medina is going to be the presenter for that particular day, and is already gaining momentum and whatnot. So I'm just hoping and praying that the Baha Center will be able to handle the capacity of this event. It's going to be a really wonderful event. And just one more thing, announcement, is that Mother's Day. I don't know if Masjid Al-Taqwa is doing anything, but at the Baha Center, the brothers will be doing the breakfast, Mother's Day breakfast for the sisters. It's a tradition that we've been doing for a while, and we want to continue to do it. And we try to do it early enough where we could do it for you all, and you all can still have time to go spend with your families also. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, alhamdulillah. No, we've always done it either the week before, but alhamdulillah. Okay, thank you all for your attention. Let's go ahead and grab some food. We're going to close with dua. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار والعصر إن الإنسان لا يفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
Assalamu alaikum. You went to school with Elijah?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
Talk about it.
What's your name? Tariq El-Amin.
Yeah, I'm gonna be coming up there.
You keep doing it.
Should have a lot.